The soft blue glow of the observatory's holographic projectors cast ethereal shadows across Ambassador Leah Shan's face as she studied the peculiar anomaly at the edge of the Thalessa star system. Her slender fingers, adorned with the traditional copper rings of a senior archaeologist, traced the unusual energy patterns that had persisted for nearly 3 planetary cycles. "The signature defies our classification algorithms," she murmured, her 4-lobed eyes narrowing in concentration. The Meren species had evolved exceptional peripheral vision, an adaptation that had once helped their ancestors detect predators in Thalessa's dense purple forests. Now those same eyes scrutinized the mysteries of space with unmatched precision. The year was 3247 by the Galactic Standard Calendar. The Meren civilization had achieved interstellar travel nearly 4 centuries ago, establishing a modest network of colonies throughout their star system. Their technological advancement had been steady, but deliberate, guided by their deep reverence for celestial artifacts and the cosmic balance they represented. Leah had spent most of her career studying the remnants of forgotten civilizations scattered throughout the Thalessa system. Her expertise in xenoarchaeology had earned her the distinguished position of Ambassador to the Unknown, a role created by the Planetary Council to handle any potential first contact scenarios. It was largely considered a ceremonial position. The Meren had encountered only 2 other spacefaring species in their history, both significantly less advanced than themselves. "Ambassador Shan," called a voice from the observatory entrance. Leah turned to see Eliana, her young apprentice, hurrying toward her with uncharacteristic urgency. The trainee's usual composed demeanor had vanished, replaced by wide-eyed excitement that made the luminescent freckles on her face pulse rapidly. "The anomaly. It's changed," Eliana managed between quick breaths. "Director Voss requests your immediate presence in the central monitoring chamber." Leah felt a momentary tightness in her chest, a premonition of change that she couldn't quite articulate. With a swift gesture, she closed the holographic display and followed Eliana through the curved corridors of the orbital station. The walls, fashioned from transparent alloy that showcased the breathtaking vista of Meren below, seemed a blur as they hastened their pace. The central monitoring chamber hummed with unprecedented activity. Technicians darted between consoles, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of technical jargon and exclamations. At the center stood Director Voss, a veteran astronomer, whose weathered face betrayed none of the chaos surrounding him. "Ambassador," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "Our long-range sensors have detected movement within the anomaly. Substantial movement." He gestured toward the main display where a series of gravitational readings flashed in alarming red sequences. "Whatever is out there, it's massive, and it's heading toward the outer reaches of our system." Leah studied the data with growing fascination. "How massive are we talking about, Director?" Voss hesitated, his brow furrowing deeply. "Preliminary calculations suggest objects with mass signatures comparable to small moons. Multiple objects." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled scientists. In the 4 centuries of Meren space exploration, they had never encountered artificial structures of such magnitude. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" Leah suggested, though she already suspected the answer. "The movement patterns are too precise," responded Voss, projecting a new series of trajectory calculations onto the display. "And we're now receiving electromagnetic emissions consistent with artificial propulsion systems." As if to confirm his assessment, the main screen suddenly flickered with new data. A communications specialist called out from her station, "Director, we're detecting organized signal bursts." Leah moved closer to the screen, her scientific curiosity momentarily overshadowing the potential danger. "Can we decode them?" "Working on it," the specialist replied, her fingers dancing across the interface. "The pattern suggests some form of language, but nothing matching our existing xenolinguistic databases." The chamber's atmosphere grew increasingly tense as more information poured in from the various sensor arrays positioned throughout the Thalessa system. Within hours, the Planetary Council had convened an emergency session, with Leah participating remotely from the observatory. High Counselor Thane, the aged leader of the Marin government, addressed the assembly with characteristic solemnity. Ambassador Shan, as our foremost expert in extraterrestrial studies, what is your assessment of this situation? Leah chose her words carefully, aware that her interpretation would likely guide the Council's response. The evidence strongly suggests we are witnessing the arrival of an advanced spacefaring civilization, Counselor. The scale of their vessels indicates either a profound mastery of construction technologies beyond our comprehension, or an evolutionary physiology that requires such expansive habitats. Are they a threat? The question came from Counselor Maris, whose military background colored her perception of the unknown. That remains unclear, Leah replied honestly. Their approach is deliberate but not aggressive. They've made no attempt to conceal their presence, which could be interpreted as transparent intentions. Or supreme confidence in their technological superiority, countered Maris. High Counselor Thane raised a hand to quiet the murmurs that followed. What course of action do you recommend, Ambassador? Leah didn't hesitate. We should initiate contact, Counselor. A small delegation aboard one of our reconnaissance vessels. We could approach with clearly broadcast peaceful intentions. And if their intentions are not peaceful, Maris persisted. Then a small delegation presents a minimal target, Leah answered pragmatically, and provides valuable intelligence should we need to prepare more defensive measures. The debate continued for hours, with various counselors weighing the potential risks against the historic opportunity. Eventually, High Counselor Thane delivered the verdict. Ambassador Shan will lead a diplomatic mission to establish first contact. She will be accompanied by Captain Helos of the Security Fleet and Engineer Drin from the Advanced Technologies Division. The mission will depart from the orbital station within 12 hours. As the council session concluded, Leah found herself standing before the observatory's vast viewing window, gazing out at the stars, where somewhere drawing ever closer, vessels of incomprehensible size carried an unknown civilization toward their own. Quite the responsibility you've taken on, came a deep voice from behind her. Leah turned to find Captain Helos approaching his tall frame, silhouetted against the chamber's dim lighting. The captain's reputation as a brilliant strategist was well established throughout the security fleet, though Leah had only met him briefly during formal functions. One I'm not entirely sure I've earned, she admitted. My expertise lies in studying the remnants of civilizations, not engaging with living ones. Helos came to stand beside her, his gaze following hers out into the void. Perhaps understanding how civilizations lived is precisely the insight we need when meeting a new one. Let's hope so, Leah replied. What's your assessment of our visitors, Captain? From a tactical perspective, Helos considered for a moment. Their size makes them formidable by default, but size also creates vulnerabilities, larger heat signatures, slower maneuverability, more complex systems to maintain. You're already calculating how to fight them, Leah observed without judgment. It's my responsibility to consider all scenarios, he responded calmly, just as it's yours to foster understanding. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the third member of their delegation, Engineer Drin, whose reputation for brilliant innovations was matched only by his penchant for unorthodox problem-solving approaches. Ambassador Captain Drin greeted them with an informal salute. I hear we're going to poke a cosmic leviathan with a diplomatic stick. Sounds appropriately thrilling. Helos frowned at the engineer's levity, but Leah found herself appreciating the break in tension. We're going to establish peaceful contact with a potentially advanced civilization, Engineer Drin. Same thing, different words, Drin replied with a shrug. I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their propulsion systems. Fascinating stuff, makes our gravity drives look like children's toys. Whatever these beings are, they've mastered energy manipulation on a scale we've only theorized about. The following hours passed in a flurry of preparation. Leah reviewed every first contact protocol in the Marin archives, while Helos prepared the reconnaissance vessel and Drin packed an assortment of analytical tools that he insisted would be essential. The reconnaissance vessel, officially designated Explorer 7, but affectionately named Whisper by its crew, was designed for stealth observation missions. Its sleek, dark hull absorbed rather than reflected light, and its propulsion system generated minimal energy signatures. For this mission, however, stealth seemed somewhat redundant. Their visitors had made no effort to conceal their approach. As the Whisper disengaged from the orbital station and began its journey toward the outer reaches of the Thalessa system, Leah felt the weight of history pressing down upon her shoulders. Whatever happened in the coming days would forever alter the course of Marin civilization. The journey to the coordinates where the unknown vessels had been detected took nearly 16 hours. Leah used the time to review all available data, searching for patterns or clues that might help them establish meaningful communication. "We're approaching the designated coordinates," announced Captain Halos from the pilot station. "Sensors active at maximum sensitivity." Engineer Drin, who had been tinkering with a communications array, looked up with sudden interest. "I'm getting readings. Enormous readings." The view screen adjusted automatically as the Whisper's external cameras focused on the distant objects. At first, Leah could discern only points of light against the backdrop of space. But as the vessel drew closer, those points resolved into shapes that defied comprehension. "By the cosmic architects," whispered Halos, his usual composure momentarily shattered. Before them stretched a formation of vessels so vast that Leah's mind struggled to process their scale. The leading ship, if such a conventional term could apply to something so monumental, extended like a metallic continent, its surface marked with structures that resembled cities. Massive rings rotated around sections of the hull, generating artificial gravity through centrifugal force. Energy fields shimmered around propulsion arrays that dwarfed the largest MREN orbital stations. "Our entire fleet could dock in one of those hangar bays," Drin remarked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Leah forced herself to think clinically, to set aside the awe that threatened to overwhelm her scientific training. "Enhance the forward section," she instructed. "Look for communication arrays or observation platforms, anything that might indicate where their command center is located." The view screen zoomed in on the colossal vessel's forward section, revealing intricate patterns of lights and structures. What had initially appeared as a smooth hull was actually composed of countless smaller components, all functioning in perfect synchronization. "I'm detecting energy fluctuations," reported Drin, studying his instruments. "They're scanning us." "Broadcast our greeting message on all frequencies," Leah ordered. The message, a carefully constructed series of mathematical sequences, followed by simple linguistic patterns, had been prepared as a universal introduction designed to demonstrate intelligence and peaceful intentions. For several tense minutes, there was no response. The massive vessels continued their slow advance into the Thalessa system, seemingly indifferent to the tiny Marin ship hovering at a respectful distance. "They're ignoring us," Halos observed, his hand hovering near the navigation controls. "Perhaps we should withdraw to a safer distance." "Wait," Leah urged. "They may need time to analyze our message. Remember, their communication systems might operate differently from ours. Or they might consider us too insignificant for a response," Drin suggested, though his continued monitoring of the instruments belied his apparent pessimism. Another minute passed in silence before Drin suddenly straightened in his seat. "Ambassador, I'm detecting a directed transmission, aimed precisely at our position." "Receive it!" Leah commanded, her hearts racing with anticipation. The ship's speakers emitted a series of complex tones and modulations patterns that seemed tantalizingly close to language, but remained just beyond comprehension. "They're attempting to communicate," Leah concluded. "Drin, can you analyze the structure? Find any similarities to our linguistic databases?" The engineer's fingers flew across his console. "Working on it. There are definite patterns. The transmission contains mathematical sequences similar to our greeting. I think they're trying to establish a common reference point." For the next several hours, The exchange continued, each transmission from the giant vessels growing more complex as they seemingly adjusted to the Marin communication protocols. Drin worked tirelessly, developing a rudimentary translation matrix that began to decipher portions of the messages. "I believe they're inviting us to approach," he finally announced, looking up from his console with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "They've transmitted coordinates for what appears to be a docking or observation area." Hillis frowned. "It could be a trap." "It could be," Leah acknowledged. "But refusing the invitation might be interpreted as hostile." She studied the transmitted coordinates that now displayed on the view screen, showing a section of the massive vessel's outer hull. "We'll proceed cautiously. Maintain all systems at ready status." The Whisper edged closer to the colossal ship, its diminutive size becoming even more apparent as they approached. What had seemed like small structures on the hull now revealed themselves to be massive installations, communication arrays, defense systems, and observation platforms, all built on a scale that made Marin technology appear primitive by comparison. "Look at the detail in those construction patterns." Drin marveled, his scientific curiosity temporarily overshadowing caution. "The precision is incredible. Those aren't just functional components. There's an aesthetic philosophy embedded in the design." As they neared the designated coordinates, a section of the hull began to transform. Panels shifted position, revealing an opening that expanded to create a cavernous bay, large enough to accommodate vessels many times the Whisper's size. "They're inviting us inside," Leah realized, both thrilled and terrified by the prospect. Helos's expression hardened. "Ambassador, with all due respect, entering their vessel would place us completely at their mercy." "We're already at their mercy, Captain," Leah pointed out. "A ship of that size could destroy us with minimal effort if that were their intention." "She's right," Drin agreed. "Besides, think of the technological insights we might gain. This is an unprecedented opportunity." After brief deliberation, they decided to accept the implicit invitation. The Whisper cautiously navigated into the enormous docking bay, its sensors recording every detail of the alien technology surrounding them. The interior space stretched far beyond what the external opening had suggested, a cavernous expanse, lined with structures that appeared to be monitoring stations and maintenance facilities. Other vessels were docked in various sections of the bay, all significantly larger than the Whisper, but dwarfed by the overall scale of their surroundings. "Look at the atmospheric composition readings," Drin noted with surprise. "They've adjusted the environment in this section to match Marin physiological requirements. They must have analyzed our vessel's specifications." "A gesture of hospitality," Leah suggested. "Or a demonstration of technological superiority." "Both, most likely," Helos responded, guiding the Whisper to a designated docking platform. As the vessel settled onto the platform, Leah faced a crucial decision. Protocol dictated maintaining the integrity of their environmental systems until compatibility with alien environments could be conclusively established. But the gesture of atmospheric adjustment seemed to warrant reciprocal trust. "We'll disembark," she announced. "Minimal protective gear, breathing filters only. Drin, bring your analysis equipment and translation matrix. Helos, standard security protocols." The captain nodded, checking his sidearm, a non-lethal neutralizing device that was standard issue for security fleet personnel. "2 security officers will accompany us. The rest will remain with the ship on high alert." Minutes later, as the Whisper's exit ramp descended, Leah took a deep breath and stepped onto the deck of the enormous alien vessel. The gravity felt slightly heavier than Marin standard, but within tolerable parameters. The air, despite passing through her filter, carried unfamiliar scents, metallic and somehow more dense than the processed atmosphere of Marin habitats. The docking bay stretched around them in all directions, its ceiling so high that it disappeared into shadow despite the bright illumination from recessed lighting strips. The scale was disorienting. Even the smallest details of the surrounding structure seemed designed for beings larger than the Marin. "No welcoming committee," Drin wondered aloud, already scanning their surroundings with his instruments. Perhaps they're observing us first. Leah suggested, gesturing toward what appeared to be sensor arrays, mounted at various points throughout the bay. They had advanced only a short distance from their vessel when a section of the deck ahead of them began to reconfigure. Panels slid apart, and a platform rose from below, bearing several figures. The beings that stood before them were bipedal, significantly taller than the average Meren, with physiologies that suggested an evolutionary history very different from their own. Their skin tones varied from pale beige to deep brown, and they possessed only two eyes frontally positioned in a manner that suggested predatory ancestry. Humans, Drin whispered, consulting his portable database. The physical characteristics match fragmentary records from the ancient archives. There were theories they might have achieved space travel before their home systems documented instability, but no confirmation until now. One of the humans stepped forward, a figure of imposing height, dressed in attire that suggested authority. When it spoke, the sounds were incomprehensible to Leah's ears, but Drin quickly activated his translation device. "Welcome to the Terran Confederation vessel Horizon," came the approximate translation, the artificial voice struggling to convey nuances of tone. "I am Ambassador Tyron, representing the United Confederation of Human Worlds." Leah stepped forward, performing the traditional Meren greeting gesture, a circular motion of both hands that symbolized the cosmic balance. "I am Ambassador Leah Shan of the Meren Planetary Council. We come in peace and with great curiosity about your magnificent vessels." The human ambassador's expression changed in a way Leah couldn't interpret. Their facial musculature operated differently from Meren physiology. But the translator interpreted the next utterance as containing amusement. "Our vessels often provoke strong reactions from those encountering them for the first time," Ambassador Tyron said. "The Horizon is our diplomatic carrier, one of the smaller vessels in our exploration fleet." Drin made a sound that their own translator would have marked as disbelief. The idea that this colossal structure could be considered smaller, by any standard, was staggering. "We would be honored to learn more about your civilization." Leah continued maintaining the diplomatic formalities, despite her overwhelming curiosity. "The Meren have long believed that we share this galaxy with other intelligent species, but this is only our third confirmed contact." Ambassador Tyran gestured toward an opening that had appeared in the wall of the docking bay. "Please, join us in more comfortable surroundings. We have prepared a reception area suitable for your physiological needs." As they followed the human delegation through corridors scaled for beings much larger than themselves, Leah's archaeological training couldn't help but analyze everything she observed. The design aesthetics suggested a civilization that valued both functionality and beauty. Complex patterns, decorated structural elements without compromising their integrity, and lighting systems mimicked natural diurnal cycles. The reception area turned out to be a vast chamber with transparent walls that offered a breathtaking view of space and the distant blue glow of Meren's home planet. Furnishings had been adjusted to accommodate both human and Meren physiologies, another gesture that suggested either remarkable adaptability or extensive prior research. "Your arrival in our system was unexpected but not unwelcome," Leah explained, as they settled into the discussion area. "We've been detecting unusual energy signatures for several planetary cycles, but had no frame of reference for vessels of your scale." Ambassador Tyron nodded, a gesture that apparently transcended species differences. "We've been exploring this sector for approximately 30 of your years, establishing diplomatic and trade relationships where possible. Your civilization was recently added to our contact registry when our long-range sensors detected your interplanetary infrastructure." 30 years. Helos interjected his security training, making him alert to temporal implications. "Yet, this is our first awareness of your presence in nearby systems. The vastness of space provides excellent privacy," Tyron responded smoothly. "Our policy is non-interference until a civilization demonstrates certain technological thresholds. Your recent advancements in gravity manipulation technology indicated readiness for contact." Leah found herself fascinated by the implications. "You've been observing us." "Studying, not surveilling," clarified Tyron. "Just as you're currently studying us. Knowledge precedes understanding. Understanding precedes meaningful relationship." The diplomatic exchange continued for several hours, with both sides sharing carefully selected information about their respective civilizations. The humans revealed their origins in a distant star system they called Sol, which they had been forced to partially evacuate centuries ago due to increasing solar instability. Their diaspora had led to the colonization of multiple systems and the development of the massive vessels that now served as both transportation and permanent habitats for billions of their kind. "Our ships evolved from necessity," explained Tyron. "When facing extinction, we had to conceptualize vessels that could sustain entire populations indefinitely. What began as survival arcs eventually became integral to our cultural identity. Most humans now are born live and die aboard vessels like the Horizon, though we maintain planetary settlements throughout Confederation space." "The engineering challenges must have been extraordinary," Drin commented, barely containing his professional excitement. "The energy requirements alone for vessels of this scale were solved through advancements in zero-point energy extraction," Tyran confirmed. "A technology we'd be willing to discuss sharing depending on the development of our diplomatic relationship." This casual offer of technology, centuries beyond current Meren capabilities, sent a ripple of excitement through Leah. The potential benefits for her people were immeasurable, but she remained cautious about potential dependencies such exchanges might create. As their initial meeting concluded, Ambassador Tyron extended an unexpected invitation. "We would be honored to provide your delegation with a tour of the Horizon's public sectors. Few non-humans have had the opportunity to witness the internal ecosystem of a Confederation carrier." The opportunity was too valuable to decline. After confirming with Captain Helos that their vessel would remain secure in their absence, Leah accepted the invitation with appropriate diplomatic gratitude. What followed was a journey through environments that challenged her conception of what spacecraft could encompass. The Horizon contained entire cities within its structure, residential districts with architecture reminiscent of planetary settlements, agricultural sectors where vast hydroponic systems produced food for the vessel's population, educational facilities where young humans learned the skills necessary for maintaining their mobile world. "Our society had to become self-sustaining in every sense," Tyran explained, as they observed a massive atrium where simulated weather systems created rain cycles for the vegetation below. "Each carrier is designed to function independently, if necessary, though we prefer the community of our fleet." "How many individuals live aboard this vessel?" Leah asked, watching groups of humans going about their daily activities, seemingly oblivious to the fact that they were traveling through space at velocities that would have impressed even Meren physicists. "The Horizon supports approximately 7 million permanent residents, with capacity for an additional 2 million temporary inhabitants." Tyran answered casually, as if the numbers were unremarkable. Drin made a sound that didn't require translation to convey his astonishment. "That exceeds the population of our largest orbital habitat by a factor of... well, I've lost count of the factors." "Necessity drove innovation," Tyran responded with what the translator suggested was humility. "We would have preferred more time to develop our ARC technology, but astronomical events rarely consider the readiness of civilizations they impact." As they continued their tour moving through magnetic transport systems that whisked them between distant sections of the vessel, Leah found herself increasingly drawn to the cultural aspects of this mobile human civilization. Their art incorporated motifs of stars and cosmic phenomena, a people who had embraced their destiny among the stars, rather than lamenting the loss of their ancestral world. "Your adaptation is remarkable," she observed, as they paused in what appeared to be a memorial garden, where representations of the human's original planetary system stood as sculptures among living vegetation. "To translate planetary cultures to these vessels without losing your essential identity. The transition wasn't without conflict, Tyran acknowledged. Our historical archives document the social upheavals of the diaspora era, but ultimately, survival proved a powerful motivator for consensus. Their tour was interrupted by a communication from Captain Helos, whose voice carried unmistakable tension even through the translation system. Ambassador Shan, we have a situation requiring your immediate attention. Security sensors have detected unauthorized MREN life signs in restricted areas of the human vessel. Leah felt her blood cool with apprehension. Unauthorized, all members of our delegation should be accounted for. These are not delegation members, Helos clarified grimly. Preliminary identification suggests members of the Nexus Syndicate. The Nexus Syndicate, a notorious criminal organization that operated in the shadows of Maren society, trafficking in restricted technologies and archaeological artifacts. Their presence aboard the human vessel could only mean one thing: they had somehow infiltrated, alongside the diplomatic mission, likely with the intention of acquiring advanced technology through illicit means. Ambassador Tyran. Leah began struggling to maintain diplomatic composure while addressing this potential catastrophe. It appears that criminal elements from our society may have accessed your vessel. I must extend my deepest apologies and offer our complete cooperation in locating and apprehending these individuals. Tyran's expression shifted to what the translator interpreted as severe concern. This is a significant security breach, Ambassador Shan. Our vessel contains technologies that could be devastating if misused or misunderstood. I understand completely, Leah assured him. Captain Helos is our foremost security expert. With your permission, he can coordinate with your security forces to resolve this situation immediately. As Tyran conferred with his own security personnel, Leah exchanged private communications with Helos. How did this happen? She demanded in a hushed tone. Our departure was classified information. Information security has always been the Council's weakness, Helos replied grimly. The Syndicate has infiltrators everywhere. They must have discovered our mission and deployed operatives to shadow our approach. They'll damage everything we've worked to establish, Leah realized with growing horror. If they steal or damage human technology. Her concerns proved prophetic. Alarms suddenly reverberated throughout the section they occupied, and Tyran's communication device activated with urgent messages in the human language. There's been an incident, Tyran informed them after a tense exchange with his security team. Unauthorized individuals have accessed a propulsion maintenance junction and activated emergency containment protocols. The entire section is now locked down with both your people and several of our technicians trapped inside. The situation deteriorated rapidly. According to reports from the human security forces, the Syndicate operatives, 4 in total, had attempted to extract components from a critical propulsion control system. When discovered by maintenance personnel, they had triggered emergency security measures, whether intentionally or accidentally. The containment system is designed to prevent catastrophic propulsion failures, Tyran explained, as they hurried toward the affected section. It seals the compromised area and begins a systematic power reduction to prevent cascade effects. Unfortunately, this includes atmospheric regulation. The available oxygen in that section will deplete within approximately 2 hours. We need to establish communication with them, Leah insisted. Perhaps we can convince them to surrender and cooperate with deactivation procedures. Not that simple, Drin interjected, studying schematics that human engineers had shared with him. The containment system is hardwired with physical cutoffs to prevent remote, override a safety feature, to protect the broader vessel from potential sabotage. They arrived at a security command center, where displays showed the sealed section, a massive chamber filled with technology beyond Maren comprehension. The Syndicate operatives could be seen attempting to force access to a control panel, while human technicians were gathered in a defensive position at the far side of the chamber. We've established limited communication, reported a human security officer, activating an audio connection. Leah stepped forward. This is Ambassador Leah Shan. You are endangering both yourselves and innocent personnel. The section you've accessed is now under emergency containment. Atmospheric systems are shutting down. You have less than 2 hours before oxygen depletion. A harsh laugh came through the speakers. How convenient for them to have a diplomat explain our execution. The voice belonged to Varen Kost, a notorious syndicate operator who specialized in technology theft. We know exactly what we've accessed, Ambassador. This propulsion technology is worth more than all the combined research budgets of the Planetary Council for the next century. You won't live to profit from it, Leah countered, struggling to keep frustration from her voice. The containment systems cannot be overridden remotely. Perhaps not by you, Kost replied confidently. But we've brought specialized decryption tools. We'll be through these systems in under an hour with our prizes intact. The communication abruptly terminated, leaving Leah facing Ambassador Tyran across the command center. The human's expression had hardened into what the translator suggested was controlled anger. This is precisely the scenario our security protocols are designed to prevent, Tyran stated coldly. Unauthorized access to propulsion technology by civilizations that may not understand its proper containment. These criminals do not represent Marin society or governance, Leah insisted desperately. They are outlaws who operate against our laws and values. Yet they reached our vessel alongside your diplomatic mission, Tyran observed, which suggests at minimum significant security vulnerabilities in your protocols. The situation was deteriorating both physically and diplomatically. The human technicians trapped in the containment zone were now visibly struggling with equipment, presumably attempting to restore atmospheric systems through manual overrides. There must be a way to resolve this without casualties, Leah insisted. Your technicians are innocent victims, as is our broader relationship. Tyran studied her for a moment before responding. There is one possibility, but it presents considerable risk. The containment system can be manually overridden from an adjacent control junction, but doing so requires physical presence and biometric confirmation from authorized personnel. I'll go, Helos volunteered immediately. Not alone, Tyran countered. The override requires simultaneous authentication from both sides of the security partition, human, and in this unique circumstance, Marin. I will provide the human authorization. One of you must provide the counterpart. I will go, Leah decided firmly. As ambassador, the responsibility for this situation ultimately rests with me. Drin looked alarmed. The radiation levels in the adjacent junction will be significantly elevated due to the containment procedures. Even with protection, exposure should be minimized. Then we'll work quickly, Leah responded, her determination unmistakable. What followed was a tense operation that tested both diplomatic trust and technical expertise. Leah and Tyran, equipped with radiation shielding that the humans provided, entered a narrow maintenance corridor that ran parallel to the sealed propulsion section. Engineer Drin guided them remotely through the complex override procedures, coordinating with human technical specialists. The system requires synchronized authentication, Tyran explained, as they reached the override junction, a heavily shielded chamber containing control interfaces, marked with warning symbols, universal enough for Leah to recognize the danger. We must both confirm our authorization within a 3-second window, then engage the physical cutoff switches in precise sequence. The procedure was complicated by the deteriorating conditions in the main chamber, where the syndicate operatives had realized their decryption efforts were failing and had begun more desperate attempts to breach the containment. Alarms indicated they were attempting to physically dismantle critical components, actions that threatened not just the immediate section, but potentially the stability of the entire propulsion system. If they damaged the gravitational alignment buffers, warned a human engineer through their communication link, the resulting field collapse could tear apart that entire section. Time was running out for both the trapped technicians and potentially the diplomatic mission itself. Leah could see the growing tension in Tyran's posture as they prepared for the override attempt. "Ambassador," she said quietly, as they positioned themselves at the control interfaces. "Regardless of the outcome, I want to express my profound regret for this situation. The actions of these criminals do not reflect the values or intentions of the Meren people. Tyron's expression softened slightly. I have encountered enough civilizations to recognize the difference between governmental policy and criminal opportunism, Ambassador Shan. Let us focus on resolving the immediate crisis. Then, we can address the broader implications. The override procedure required precise timing and coordination. As radiation levels continued to rise around them, Leah and Tyran synchronized their actions, inputting complex authorization codes and engaging physical switches in a carefully choreographed sequence. The system responded sluggishly, damage from the Syndicate's tampering, having compromised some functions. The primary override circuit is damaged, reported Drin, through their communication link. You'll need to reroute through the Auxiliary Systems Panel 7 Delta on your right, Ambassador. As Leah made the adjustment, a sudden power surge cascaded through the junction. Sparks erupted from nearby conduits, and warning indicators flashed across the control interfaces. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the entire override might fail catastrophically. Stabilize your side, Tyran called out, his hands moving with practiced efficiency across his own interface. Match the power distribution exactly. Drawing on every bit of technical knowledge she'd acquired through her archaeological studies of ancient technologies, Leah adjusted the controls, bringing the fluctuating energy patterns into alignment with Tyran's steady configuration. Gradually, the system stabilized and the override sequence resumed its progress. Containment protocols disengaging announced the system's automated voice, the words translated simultaneously for both of them. Atmospheric regulation restored. Security partitions disengaging in sequence alpha through gamma. Through monitoring displays in the junction, they could see the effects of their success. Emergency lighting in the sealed section shifted from red to standard illumination, and ventilation systems rumbled back to life. The trapped technicians visibly sagged with relief, while the Syndicate operatives looked frantically for escape routes as security barriers began to retract. Security teams are moving in, reported Captain Helos through the communication link. The criminals will be apprehended momentarily. Leah allowed herself a moment of relief, though she knew the diplomatic consequences of this incident would require careful navigation. As she and Tyran exited the radiation-heavy junction, medical personnel from both species waited to examine them for exposure effects. Your quick action likely saved lives today, Tyran acknowledged as they underwent decontamination procedures. Both your people and mine. Yet the damage to our nascent relationship may be considerable, Leah responded soberly. Trust is easily fractured but laboriously rebuilt. Perhaps, Tyran allowed. But demonstrated character in crisis reveals more than formal diplomatic exchanges ever could. Your willingness to risk personal safety to address a situation created by your own people that carries significant weight in human diplomatic assessment. The aftermath of the crisis unfolded rapidly. The Syndicate operatives were taken into custody by a joint security team with agreements made for their eventual transfer to Meren authorities after a full investigation of the technical damage they had caused. Captain Helos coordinated security protocols with his human counterparts, establishing improved screening procedures to prevent similar infiltrations in the future. Meanwhile, Engineer Drin found himself in animated technical discussions with human engineers who seemed surprisingly open to sharing certain aspects of their technology despite the recent security breach. Their approach to gravitational manipulation is elegant, Drin reported enthusiastically during a private meeting with Leah. They've achieved efficiencies we theorized were possible, but couldn't practically implement. And interestingly, they seem quite impressed by our sensor array designs. Apparently, our emphasis on passive observation techniques offers advantages their more energy-intensive approaches lack. This unexpected area of complementary expertise provided Leah with a diplomatic opening. During formal discussions with Ambassador Tyran and a council of human representatives, the following cycle, she proposed a structured technology exchange program offering Meren advances in sensor technology and astronomical modeling in exchange for limited access to human propulsion theory. Your vessels represent a scale of engineering that would take our civilization centuries to achieve independently, she acknowledged candidly. We do not ask for direct transfer of such technologies that would create dangerous dependencies and potential misapplications. Instead, we propose collaborative research that allows each civilization to advance along its own developmental path, informed by shared knowledge. The Human Council deliberated briefly before Tyron responded. Your proposal shows wisdom, Ambassador Shan. Technological leapfrogging often creates more problems than it solves, as the unfortunate actions of your criminal elements demonstrated. They sought to steal technology they could not possibly integrate safely. The negotiations extended over several cycles, with both delegations working to establish parameters for ongoing diplomatic relations. The Marin Planetary Council, initially alarmed by the Syndicate incident, gradually recognized the tremendous opportunities presented by contact with the human civilization. As discussions progressed, Leah found herself increasingly drawn to the cultural aspects of human society. Their evolutionary history, as a planetary species that had been forced to adapt to permanent space habitation, produced philosophical perspectives, both alien and strangely familiar to Marin sensibilities. Your people value celestial artifacts as windows into cosmic history, Tyran observed during a more informal exchange. Humans have developed similar reverence for Earth relics, preserved fragments of our ancestral world. Despite our vastly different physiologies and histories, both our species search for meaning in remnants of the past. Perhaps that's the universal constant, Leah suggested. Not biological similarities or technological parallels, but the shared quest to understand our place in the cosmos through what has come before. 20 cycles after the initial contact, a historic agreement was ratified between the Marin Planetary Council and the Terran Confederation. The Unity Patrol Initiative would establish a joint exploration vessel, modest by human standards, but impressive to Marin eyes, crewed by scientists and diplomats from both civilizations. Together, they would survey neighboring star systems, expanding knowledge for both peoples, while strengthening their diplomatic bonds. The launch ceremony took place in orbit around Marin, with the Unity patrol vessel positioned symbolically between the massive human carriers and the elegant Mren orbital stations. As one of the architects of the agreement, Leah had been offered command of the Marin contingent, a role she had accepted with both humility and determination. Standing at the observation deck of the launching platform, she gazed out at the assembled vessels. The human ships still inspired awe with their colossal proportions, but that initial shock had transformed into something more nuanced appreciation for the engineering ingenuity they represented, respect for the civilization that had turned necessity into art. Quite a view, isn't it? Engineer Drin joined her at the viewport, his expression reflecting the same contemplative mood. When I first saw their ships, I felt insignificant, Leah admitted, as if our entire civilization was dwarfed by their achievement. Understandable, Drin nodded. But do you still feel that way? Leah considered the question carefully. No. Size creates certain advantages, certainly. But I've come to realize that scale alone doesn't determine a civilization's value or potential. Some of our sensor technologies are being integrated into their vessels. Now our contributions may be physically smaller, but no less significant. A rather perfect metaphor for interspecies cooperation, observed Ambassador Tyron approaching to join their conversation. Different scales, different strengths, complementary contributions. The Unity Patrol embarks tomorrow, Leah noted. Our first truly collaborative venture. The first of many, we hope, Tyran responded. Though I must warn you, humans tend to think expansively. Within a decade, you may find yourselves participating in projects of considerably larger scale. Drin laughed. By then, perhaps we'll have become accustomed to your species' definition of reasonable dimensions. As ceremonial lights illuminated the Unity patrol vessel, against the backdrop of space, Leah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The initial fear and awe inspired by the human vessels, had evolved into partnership not despite their differences in scale and capability, but because those very differences created opportunities for meaningful exchange. The colossal human starships still dominated the visual field, their massive forms representing both achievement and ambition. But they no longer seemed alien or intimidating. Instead, they stood as monuments to a shared future, different approaches to the same cosmic journey, now traveling in tandem through the vast expanse of possibilities. In the grandeur of that moment, with representatives of two distinct civilizations standing together beneath the stars, Leah understood a truth that transcended physical dimensions. Greatness was measured not in the size of vessels, but in the courage to bridge the void between them.